Okay, ready to dive deep. You sent us this episode of the Growth Mindset podcast about daily habits, and I gotta say, I'm hooked already. But this isn't about just any old routine, right? This is about finding what really works for you.
Absolutely. And one thing that jumped out at me was this idea of habit stacking. It's not just about adding new habits,
Mm.
but really weaving them into what you're already doing.
Oh, habit stacking. I like that. Kind of makes those small changes feel less scary, right? Like instead of trying to revamp your whole morning, maybe you just add a quick meditation after you brush your teeth.
Exactly. And they made a really good point about how those small wins, they really add up. Like they gave this example of a woman who just committed to 5 minutes of journaling every single day. At first, she didn't see a huge difference, but after a few months, she found herself way less stressed and so much more self-aware.
See, that's what I'm talking about. It's consistency, not some crazy intense thing that makes all the difference.
Totally. And that whole idea of consistency, it's at the heart of that morning routine framework they talked about. Hydrate, move, and plan. Each piece is simple, but put them together and you've got a solid start to your day.
Okay, let's break that down. So, for you, what stood out about their morning routine approach? I gotta admit, the move part always gets me. I am not a morning workout person, but they kind of got me thinking maybe even 5 minutes of stretching could make a difference. What do you think?
Well, you know what's cool? The episode actually says you should tailor the move part to your energy levels and what you like. It could be a little yoga, a quick walk, even just some stretching or, hey, dancing. The point is to get your body moving and wake up.
Okay, I like that. No one size fits all. And what about the plan part? They seem to be all about planning your day with intention, not just piling up your to-do list.
Yeah, it's like connecting your daily actions to those big picture goals. Taking even just a couple of minutes to think about your priorities and making sure your tasks for the day are actually moving you in the right direction.
It's like checking in with your why, right? Reminding yourself what you're working towards.
Exactly. And speaking of connecting with yourself, they also got into the whole journaling thing. I know, a lot of people might groan at the thought, but they actually made it sound kind of cool.
I used to think journaling was for like angsty teenagers or, writers trying to find their voice, but the way they presented it, it was more about self-discovery and growth.
Totally. And they went beyond just the Dear Diary thing. They talked about different journaling styles,
Mhm.
like bullet journaling to get organized or gratitude journaling for, well, gratitude.
Oh, did any of those techniques stand out to you? I was really curious about the morning cages idea, where you just free write 3 pages every morning to clear your head.
Yeah, that one's great. It's all about getting everything out of your head and onto paper without overthinking it. They even said you shouldn't reread those pages, just let the words flow. It's about the process, not the end product.
Almost sounds therapeutic, right? It's
Yeah.
like decluttering your mind.
Exactly. And they even shared some research about how expressive writing can actually help with stress and anxiety and even boost your physical health.
Okay, so we've got the morning routine as our foundation, and then journaling to check in with ourselves. What else did they dive into?
All right, get this. They had a whole section on continuous learning as a daily habit, which, for podcast lovers like us.
Wait, are they telling us to listen to even more podcasts? I mean, I'm not complaining, but
Well, actually, they talked about all kinds of ways to learn every day, not just podcasts. They mentioned speed reading, online learning platforms like Coursera, and this really cool concept called micro-learning, which is basically breaking learning down into bite-sized chunks.
oh, micro learning. I like the sound of that. Takes the pressure off, makes learning feel less overwhelming. Like instead of tackling a whole book, you could just focus on one chapter a day.
Right. And again, consistency is key. Even just 15 minutes a day dedicated to learning can make a big difference over time.
A little bit, a lot, right? It all adds up.
You got it. And speaking of small but consistent actions, let's talk about another habit they emphasized: mindfulness. Now, I know mindfulness can sound kind of, I don't know, intimidating, but they actually made it sound pretty doable.
I struggle with that whole clear your mind thing. My brain just never shuts off. But the way they described mindfulness felt more approachable, like it didn't have to be this big formal practice.
Right. They even said, forget about trying to have a perfectly quiet mind. They shared this great analogy from a neuroscientist who said, think of your mind like a snow globe. When you're stressed, it's like shaking up that snow globe thoughts are flying everywhere. Mindfulness is like setting it down and letting the snow settle, just observing your thoughts without getting swept away.
Okay, that's a fantastic analogy. Mindfulness just became a lot clearer for me. What kind of techniques did they recommend for actually practicing mindfulness?
Well, they had a few simple but effective ones, like mindful breathing, just focusing on your breath and how it feels to inhale and exhale. They also talked about the body scan meditation, where you bring your attention to different parts of your body and notice any sensations. And they even said you can bring mindfulness into everyday things, like eating or walking, just by really paying attention to the sights, sounds, smells, the whole experience.
I love that. Finding mindful moments throughout the day, not just setting aside a specific time to meditate.
Exactly. And even a few minutes each day can make a huge difference. They talked about studies showing how mindfulness can lower stress, improve focus, help you manage your emotions, and even make you more empathetic and compassionate.
Okay, so we've got the morning routine, journaling, continuous learning, mindfulness. What was the last habit they focused on?
Well, this one might surprise you.
Mm-hmm.
They talked about having a solid evening routine, specifically incorporating evening reflection into your day.
You know, an evening routine isn't something I've ever really thought about. Usually I just plop down on the couch after dinner and scroll through my phone until bedtime. But I'm curious, what did they suggest? What kind of stuff should we be doing in our evening routine?
Well, they had some really practical tips like dimming the lights an hour before bed to help with melatonin production, taking a warm bath to relax, and disconnecting from screens so you can actually sleep. But honestly, the most interesting part for me was their focus on evening reflection.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What exactly do they mean by evening reflection?
They basically described it as a dedicated time to look back on your day and really process what happened. They even had a list of specific questions to help you reflect.
Oh, I love a good list of questions. What were some of the questions they suggested?
They had some really thought-provoking ones, like, what went well today? What were some challenges I faced? What did I learn? What am I grateful for? How can I improve tomorrow?
Those are great. It's like a little debrief at the end of each day.
Yeah, exactly. And they emphasized how reflecting on your experiences, both good and bad, can help you grow. They even said that reflecting on your wins, no matter how small, can really boost your self-esteem and give you a sense of accomplishment.
Okay, I'm starting to see the appeal of an evening routine now. It's not just about physically winding down, but also taking time to process the day mentally and emotionally.
Exactly. They even said reflecting on your day can lead to better sleep. If you take time to process your thoughts and feelings before bed, you're less likely to lie awake worrying or overthinking.
That makes sense. So it sounds like they had a really holistic view of daily habits, starting your day with intention and ending it with reflection. Did they say anything about what order to incorporate these habits in, or was it more about finding what works for each person?
Yeah, they were really clear that there's no one right way to do it. The important thing is to experiment, try different things, and find a routine that works for you and that you can actually stick with.
That's great. No pressure to be perfect. You can pick and choose the habits that resonate with you and build your own routine.
Exactly. And they even said to start small, maybe focus on one or two habits at a time, and then gradually add more as you go. Remember, consistency over perfection.
Okay, I can definitely handle that. And it goes back to what they were saying before about how those small, consistent changes really make a big impact over time.
You got it. And you know, it's cool. They even suggested using a habit tracker to keep track of your progress and celebrate your wins. They said just the act of tracking your habits can really keep you motivated and accountable.
Oh, that's a great idea. I love being able to actually see my progress. It's super motivating.
It is. And it's a good reminder that self-improvement isn't about overnight transformations. It's a journey, and it takes time and effort.
Well, I'd say we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about their take on morning routines, journaling, continuous learning, mindfulness, evening reflection. That's quite a set of habits.
It is. But remember, the key is to not overwhelm yourself. Start with one or two that resonate with you and build from there. It's all about finding what works for you and creating a routine that really supports your well-being and personal growth.
All right, that feels like a good place to take a breath. We've unpacked so much from this Growth Mindset podcast episode. Our listener's mind must be buzzing with ideas.
I bet. And we're going to go even deeper in the next part of our deep dive. One thing that really hit me was how much they talked about mindset. You know, it's not just about doing the habits, but the beliefs behind them.
Oh, yeah, like they said, habits are the outward manifestation of our inner world. So to change our habits, we got to start with our mindset. What kind of mindset shifts did they talk about?
A lot about having a growth mindset. You know, that belief that our abilities and intelligence aren't fixed. They can grow with effort and learning. They said a growth mindset is huge for building good habits because it helps you see challenges as chances to grow, not as setbacks.
Right. If you believe you can improve, you're more likely to stick with it even when things get tough. But how do you actually build that growth mindset? Do they give any tips?
They did.
Hmm.
One was to change how you talk to yourself. So instead of saying, I'm terrible at this, you'd say, I'm learning and I'm getting better every day.
Like switching from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, just
Yeah.
changing your words.
Exactly. They also said to surround yourself with people who have that growth mindset. Their energy can really rub off on you.
That's true. Your environment definitely affects your mindset.
Huh.
Okay, but let's get back to actually using these habits. We talked about the ideas, but how can our listener actually start using them in their life?
Well, they had some good advice on forming habits. One big thing was to start small and build one habit at a time.
That's what we were saying before about not doing too much at once. Better to get one habit down before moving on. Did they say how to choose which habit to start with?
Yeah. They said pick the one that feels most connected to your goals and what's important to you. So if you're really trying to de-stress, mindfulness might be good. Or if you're feeling scattered, maybe the morning routine or journaling would be better.
It's about finding the habit that'll make the biggest difference right now. But what about those times when you lose motivation or hit a wall? How do you stick with the new habits?
That's where habit triggers come in. They said if you connect a new habit to an old one, it's more likely to stick.
So, like, if I want to meditate every morning, I could do it right after I brush my teeth. Brush my teeth, then meditate. Make it a routine.
Exactly. And they talked about rewards too. When you reward yourself for sticking to a habit, it makes you want to keep going.
So, like, if I meditate every morning for a week, maybe I'll get myself a new book or take a long bath, like a little pat on the back.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be big. Even something small can reinforce the habit.
It's all about making those good connections, making the habit feel good.
You got it. And they also made a point about how your surroundings affect your habits.
Oh, this is so true. Like, if I'm trying to eat healthy, but my pantry is full of junk food, it's going to be way harder.
Right. They said to actually change your environment to support your new habits. So if you want to read more, put a book on your nightstand or download an audiobook for your commute.
It's about setting yourself up for success, making the good choice easier.
Exactly. And they even talked about how important other people can be. Being around people who support your goals can make a huge difference.
Like having your own cheering section. And you can be part of theirs too, supporting each other and celebrating each other's wins.
Exactly. Creating a whole positive vibe.
Okay, so we've talked about mindset forming habits, the importance of environment and support. Is there anything else we need to cover for actually using these habits every day?
Well, they stress being kind to yourself. They said we're often our own worst enemies, and that can really mess up our efforts to change.
Oh, that's so true. Beating ourselves up over every little mistake and then wondering why we're not getting anywhere.
Exactly. Said to treat yourself with the same kindness you'd give a friend. You know, it's okay to mess up, make mistakes, have bad days. The important thing is to get back up, learn, and keep going.
It's about progress, not perfection. Embracing the journey, not just the destination.
Exactly. And that's such an important thing to remember, especially these days when everything seems to be about instant results and overnight success. Real change takes time, effort, and a lot of self-love.
I think that's a great message for our listeners. Self-improvement isn't about being perfect. It's about being kind to yourself, embracing the process, and celebrating those small victories.
Absolutely. And something else they said that I liked was about finding joy in the journey. They talked about focusing on the good parts of changing your habits, you know, that feeling of accomplishment, the growth. You can make the whole thing more enjoyable and easier to stick with.
That's a good point. It's not about white-knuckling your way through it. It's about finding those moments of joy and celebration along the way. Did they have any ideas on how to find that joy?
Oh, they did. They talked about making a habit tracker to see your progress, which can be super motivating. They said find an accountability buddy to share your goals with and support each other. And they even said to reward yourself for your hard work, whether it's a treat or relaxing activity or just appreciating yourself.
I love those ideas. They make changing your habits feel less like a chore and more like an adventure. It's like you're not just changing your habits, you're changing how you see yourself and how you see growth.
Exactly. And that's a really powerful shift, isn't it? Moving from putting yourself down to lifting yourself up, embracing the journey and finding the joy in it.
Okay, I feel like we've really dug deep into this episode. We've covered the habits themselves, the mindset you need, the strategies for making those habits, stick the importance of your surroundings, support, and self-compassion. What else could our listener possibly need?
Well, you know, they did mention one more thing that's worth bringing up. They said it's important to make sure your habits line up with your values.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's not just about picking any random habit. It's about choosing ones that fit with what's really important to you.
Exactly. They said when your habits match your values, they feel more real and you're more likely to keep doing them.
That makes sense. If I'm forcing myself to do something that doesn't feel right, it's going to be a constant struggle.
Right. They gave an example of someone who really values creativity, but they're trying to force themselves into a strict routine that doesn't allow for any creative time.
Hmm.
It's probably going to lead to burnout.
So how do you make sure your habits are a good fit for your values? Did they have any advice on that?
They said to take some time to think about your core values and then ask yourself, do my habits support these values? Or are they stopping me from living a life that's true to myself?
That's a great question. It makes you really look at your habits and make sure they're actually helping you, not just on the surface, but on a deeper level.
Absolutely. And you know what? I think that's a perfect lead in to the last part of our deep dive, where we'll talk about making these changes last and making these habits part of your life in a way that feels good and empowering.
I can't wait to dive into that. But for now, I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about. We've unpacked so much from this Growth Mindset podcast episode, and I bet they're already coming up with ways to use these ideas in their own lives.
Oh, yeah. And we'll be right back to guide them further on their journey of self-improvement. Stay tuned.
Okay, we're back for the final stretch of our deep dive into daily habits for self-improvement. We've covered a lot of ground, from specific habits like those morning routines and journaling to bigger ideas like mindset, habit formation, and making sure your actions match your values.
Yeah, it's been a journey.
Mhm.
And I think we've given our listeners some pretty great tools for self-improvement. But now comes the real test, right? Putting all this knowledge into practice and making real lasting change.
Exactly, because knowing something in your head is one thing, but actually living it out every day is something else entirely. So where do we even start? What's step one to making a change that sticks?
Well, the episode made a big point about this.
Mhm.
Lasting change. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a process, not a one-time thing. And like any process, it takes patience, persistence, and being open to trying things out.
Makes sense. We're not looking for some quick fix, but a real shift in our habits and how we do things. More like a marathon, not a sprint.
Exactly. And they had this great analogy in the episode. They said creating lasting change is like climbing a mountain. You know, there are going to be times when it feels tough and you might even slip up. But the key is to keep your eyes on the top, keep going, even if it's just one little step at a time.
I like that analogy. It reminds us that we're all going to have setbacks, but they don't have to stop us. Just got to get back up and keep climbing.
Exactly. And they talked about celebrating those wins along the way, even the small ones. Every step forward, every little victory, it deserves to be noticed and celebrated.
That's so important. We can get so focused on the end goal that we forget to enjoy the progress we're making along the way. And those little wins can really keep you going.
Absolutely. They even said to keep a victory log, to write down those wins, big or small. It's a great way to remind yourself how far you've come.
Love that. It's like having proof of your progress. Speaking of proof, did they give any practical tips for actually staying on track with our habits?
They did. They said to create something visual to remind yourself of your goals and habits. Could be a vision board, a list of positive affirmations, or even just a sticky note on your mirror. Anything to keep those goals front and center in your life.
So true. Out of sight, out of mind. Keeping those goals visible can really keep you focused.
Exactly. They also said to make a habit tracker to keep tabs on your progress. There are tons of apps and templates online, but even just a notebook works great.
I've heard great things about habit tracking. It's a way to stay accountable and celebrate your consistency. Plus, who doesn't love checking off those boxes?
It is satisfying. And they said even if you mess up, the key is to jump right back in. Don't let one missed day turn into a whole week of missed days.
Right. Progress over perfection. We all slip up. That's just being human. The important thing is to learn from it and keep moving. Did they have any other advice for dealing with those inevitable challenges?
You know, they brought up this idea of habit elasticity.
Habit elasticity. What's that?
They said, just like a rubber band, our habits have some wiggle room. You know, life throws curveballs, and sometimes you got to adjust your routine or maybe even let go of some habits temporarily.
So it's like giving yourself permission to be flexible and go with the flow, right? Not being so strict that you fall apart when things change, because things always change.
Exactly. And they said this doesn't mean giving up on your goals completely. It's about being realistic and kind to yourself when things get tough.
Like that saying, be gentle with yourself. You're doing the best you can. We're all works in progress, and that's okay.
For sure. They even said you can try to plan for those tough times. So if you know you've got a busy week coming up, maybe you ease up on your morning routine or pick a habit that's easier to manage.
That's smart. It's all about setting yourself up for success, even when you know things are going to be a little crazy.
Exactly. And it's about being kind to yourself the whole time. Remember, change is a journey. There will be ups and downs and unexpected turns, but as long as you keep moving forward, even just a little bit at a time, you're good.
Okay, I think that's a really positive note to leave our listeners on. Making a real change isn't about being perfect, it's about sticking with it, being adaptable and kind to yourself along the way.
Absolutely. You know, at the end of the episode, they shared a quote that stuck with me. It's from James Clear, the author. He said, "Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become."
Wow, I love that. It's like every little habit we choose, we're shaping who we are, who we'll be.
Exactly. And it's not just mindless routine, it's like we're creating ourselves with every choice.
That's such a cool way to think about it. It makes changing your habits feel less like work and more like an expression of who you are, who you want to be.
It is. And it all starts with that first step, that first choice towards the person you want to be.
Well, I think we've officially reached the top of our deep dive. We've explored all those daily habits, the mindset you need to conquer them, and how to deal with those inevitable bumps along the road.
What a climb. And I have a feeling our listeners feeling pretty inspired and ready to start their own journey of self-improvement.
I hope so. And remember, you don't have to do it alone. We're here to support you every step of the way. Keep listening, keep learning, keep growing, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.